Welcome back to Profits of IT. I'm Jim Punzenberger, your host, creator of ManageProspectingSystem.com and author of $0 Advertising. ManageProspectingSystem.com brings you authority content, LinkedIn outreach, targeted emails, 3 pillars done for you every week. So check out ManageProspectingSystem.com after the show. I'm excited today to have Nick Espinosa. His title is Chief Security Fanatic at Security Fanatics. That's quite the tongue twister of a title.
Yes, I've been called worse, so all good, all good.
But it's a quite fun title, I'd have to say, if you can get it out of your mouth. He's done TED Talks. He hosts a nationally syndicated radio show. He's worked with the United Nations, and he's worked in an actual war zone too. He used to race cars, motorcycles, and he's got a great walk-up song, Why Can't We Be Friends? The man who fights cyber adversities for a living wants to be friends with everyone. Nick, welcome to Profits of IT. Feel free to say hi to the audience.
Hi, audience, and thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
Well, let's jump right into it, Nick, with your truth bomb that you mentioned when we talked before. You said cybersecurity is not primarily a technology problem. So if it's not a technology problem, Nick, what is it?
So that's the interesting part about it, and I get it all the time, where I'm contracted to consult on cybersecurity, and I'll walk into that meeting, whether it's virtual or actually in the office, and they'll say, "Okay, Nick, let's talk about cybersecurity." And I say, "No, we are not going to talk about cybersecurity first. We are going to talk about risk." Because if you can't tell me in hard and soft dollars how many computers can be off until it's so economically unviable for your organization, torches and pitchforks at the CEO's door, then how on earth do you know what you're doing is right? How on earth do you know your backups are going to be effective? How on earth do you know your defenses are exactly what you need? We have to start with risk. And so by virtue of that, one side of the issue here, and technology is important. That's the data security side. We need good firewalls, encryption, antiviral agents, EDRs, take your pick, but it's risk and it's the human side of this, right? And the other thing I like to say is I can build you a Ferrari sort of a cyber defense strategy, but if I'm turning the keys to the Ferrari over to a chimpanzee, how far are we going to get, right? We have to learn how to drive. And so when everybody is looking at the technology side of it, and this is a huge problem that MSPs have, because they've got a bronze, silver, and gold package, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that doesn't cut it anymore. I'm sorry. Like technology is important, don't get me wrong, but if you can't understand to properly indemnify the risk and you don't know how the humans are trained or how they will react in an emergency situation, then quite frankly, you're behind the ball. It's a huge issue. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you also mentioned that you can't buy your way to better security. That's probably something that most MSP owners are listening would be scratching their head about. You want to
Correct.
expand on that a bit?
Yeah. Well, and think about it from the technological standpoint, right out of the gate, because that's where MSPs tend to live. They tend to live in data security, not cybersecurity. But we have seen that the hardening and improvement of the technological side, the firewalls, et cetera, are improving. So attackers have shifted, against identity. They're moving to capturing identity, stealing identity, breaking identity, all those kinds of things. And so buying your way, I think, to better security is another really big misconception, quite frankly, because like I said, I can build all of these strategies, but at the end of the day, they're there to really truly back up the humans when something gets through. Like I have yet to see a spam filter that catches everything, any kind of antiviral agent, whatever you want to call that agent, actually see everything as well. And some are way better than the others. But this one size fits all traditional standard where it's like, well, we're just going to like layer on products and create this complete robust security stack. Well, that's well and good, providing you've got actual decent products. A lot of MSPs are running mid-range at best. The issue here that we have is that it's just not holistic, in general. And so what's the point of, again, I'll go back to that analogy. What's the point of me buying a Ferrari if I haven't learned how to drive it?
Right.
If I come from a Yugo and I buy a Ferrari, I've got a great shiny new
Yeah.
object, and I'm going to run that thing into a tree because as soon as I whomp on the gas, which barely gets the Yugo going, I'm halfway down the block, right? So
Not to mention you have to know how to drive a manual transmission with this Ferrari, which you probably didn't have to do in the Yugo.
yeah, well, and that's the point, right? Is that we learn how to drive these things. I couldn't get into an F1 car or a NASCAR or whatever you're into and get on the track and think I can compete with like a Mario Andretti. There's no way. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of training, a lot of focus, and quite frankly, what we see, especially in the security industry, is that security oftentimes is a bolt-on to just the existing service that an MSP would have. And for the record, we're not an MSP. We don't take that job. We're not interested in that at all. But this is what we see when we have clients that are
Hmm.
outsourcing, their infrastructure, their technology, their support, to an MSP. And so I'm speaking from years and years of practical experience here on that one.
Yeah, so that makes total sense. So why don't we shift gears here a moment and talk about superpower? And you mentioned your superpower is flexibility of thought. You also mentioned a morning routine that keeps you fully informed. Can you walk me through both? And how does your mind work differently? And what does the first hour of your day look like?
Yeah, yeah. So it's a couple of different things. So my morning routine, I think, sets me up for basically much of the day. Now, outside of cybersecurity, one of the things that my company does is political risk quantification. In other words, what does a government look like in terms of its legislation, where it's going, in terms of service to its people, all these kinds of things, to essentially understand the landscape of that we are going to have to deal with, not just in business, but in threat in general as well. We've seen in the last 10 plus years, a massive shift towards disinformation campaigns where we literally have populations divided on what they believe truth is,
Hmm.
on one fact, or is it the alternative fact, those kinds of things. And so I wake up every morning reading about 50, 60 publications as the world turns. I'm sitting here in North America. And so as I wake up, I start in Asia, then I go to the Middle East and Africa and Europe, and then here to get an understanding and the lay of the land of what I'm going to be facing in my day, but more importantly, what my clients are going to be facing in my day. And that requires flexibility of thought in the sense that sometimes we have to come up with innovative or creative solutions, right out of the gate on this, or new approaches to recalculating risk. The point that I've got, but when I say flexibility of thought here, is that in this field, you have to be 100% adaptable to anything that comes your way. We see the latest, most bleeding edge attacks. We were seeing AI deepfake attacks on our clients way before most companies were actually getting them. Not to mention the research on this. We've been using AI for years and years and years before, large language models were mainstream. These are the kinds of things that make an organization adaptable, but make a person open to all possibilities. I like to say that my mind is very easy to change, providing you have the actual verifiable evidence to change it. And that's the point. And the other note on that I have by virtue of that, just in my own brain, is I have a standing motto in my company, and that basically is that anybody can come to me directly. I don't care if you're the new person and you're 22 years old or you're the veteran, that's older than me. You can come to me and say, Nick, you're an idiot. I want you to tell me that I'm an idiot. But there are two caveats to telling me that I'm an idiot. Number one, you have to tell me why I'm an idiot. And
Hmm.
number two, you have to give me a solution because I can't fix what I can't see. And so I've had some excellent and amazing solutions come up, that have been brought up to me, by various people over the years. The other side of it too is none of my people can't say they haven't been listened to, because I will thoroughly listen to your suggestion, whether I agree with it or not. Explore it, understand it. What am I missing? And maybe I don't agree with you, but you can't say you haven't been heard. And that's so unbelievably important. And so getting out of that rigidity of, oh, we've just done this same thing for years. Well, the world is streamlining now, and if you're not up on that and you're not available for that mentally, that's going to be a huge detriment to who you are. It really is. And how you operate.
Yeah, that's quite the thought there. Um, so Nick, I also heard that you have a radio show. Tell us
Yes.
more about that. And does the and the I think there's also you have something to do with the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a nationally syndicated radio show. It's called the Deep Dive Cybersecurity Show, hopefully on an NPR affiliate by you. And so obviously the bulk of the stations that carry my show are in the United States, but we've got a couple of outside the US as well. And yeah, recently it was actually just a deep, deep honor. I've had some really interesting interviews over the years on the show. I got to interview like Neil deGrasse Tyson, bringing it more back to security and warfare. I actually interviewed an individual that was in the military, in the bunker at the White House on 9/11,
Wow.
as he was, just helping with the chaos and they didn't know what was going on. It was amazing interview. I got to interview somebody that specializes in outer space law, which was a mind-blowing interview to me because we are putting so much stuff up there, like think
Hmm.
like Starlink, right?
Yeah.
Well, the laws were written in the 1960s, and so this is literally true. You can go watch that interview. If, let's say, a Starlink satellite crashes into, let's say, a Chinese satellite,
Yeah.
that technically is considered an act of war by the United States against China, because when they built the laws that governed space, they did not anticipate private corporations having the capability. So I've had some really interesting interviews over the years, but my last interview was, oh, and I also interviewed the flat earth leader, like one of the leaders of the flat earth movement, which wasn't, I'm not a flat earth guy, but my goal was to get him on the show to talk about like how groups like this form in the modern age. And basically my premise was, if it wasn't for the internet, you'd be like three guys in a newsletter. You wouldn't be getting NBA players questioning if the earth was flat or not, and it was a really fascinating, keeping him on track was wild. But my last interview was with Cindy Cohn. She is soon to step down. Actually, this Monday is her last day at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And she has been basically fighting for privacy rights in front of the Supreme Court and elsewhere for 30 plus years. You might have seen her on Stephen Colbert or The Daily Show and all of that. And I was very honored to talk to her like a week or two ago. And it was just a fantastic interview. It was almost an hour long, and she just really went into all of the issues in terms of our privacy rights in the modern world. Think the metas of the world, the data collections of the world, the government surveillance of the world. And I got to ask her a ton of questions. It was a fantastic interview. It's a big fan.
Cool. So Nick, you've got me excited. I probably have the listeners excited too. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, what would be a good way of getting in touch with you?
Yeah, yeah, you can get a hold of me. Basically, well, the easiest way would probably be like LinkedIn, / Nick Espinosa. You'll see my mugshot there. And same with Facebook, and YouTube is / Nick Espinosa. And you can connect, and I'm slow on answering messages, but I promise you I will answer your message as long as you're not trying to sell me something. All good.
All right. So we can include those links in the show notes. So listeners, check the show notes below for Nick's contact information. Any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, just if you're listening to this, understand truly first and foremost that you need to be quantifying risk in your life. Everybody needs a contingency plan, whether you're an individual or you're a massive corporation. And also remember that when it comes to, technology, we are all interconnected. So a rising tide raises all boats. One of the few benefits I had in the pandemic was that I no longer have to explain exactly what herd immunity is, because this is a term I've been using for years on stage to talk about basically our digital life. Right. And so if everybody is educated on the threats that we've got all around us, whether it's our kids, our spouses, our parents, our bosses, our employees, whoever it is, we're all better off, because the more people know not to answer the phishing email, not to get infected, the better off we are, that for those that don't know that, because we're immunizing them. And I think that's a really important lesson that we should take away, just in how we are all interconnected. and continue to fight for your privacy. So unbelievably important.
Totally makes sense. So Nick, you said cybersecurity isn't a technology problem. Well, neither is growing your IT company. It's a systems problem. And managedprospectingsystem.com is the system that will help you grow your IT company. 3 pillars done for you every week. Check out managedprospectingsystem.com. And until next time, keep building. I'm Jim Punzenberger. This has been Prophets of IT. Bye for now.